All right.
So, I mean, a little surprising to me anyway. Paul, is this the right move for the Knicks to move on from Thibodeau?
Man, it's shocking. We've had some shocking firings this year, haven't we?
Yes.
This is like the third one. My boy Mike out in Memphis.
Taylor Jenkins.
Not Mike Malone in Denver.
Malone,
and then Taylor Jenkins out in Memphis.
Yeah.
And now this one, because Tibbs led them to the conference finals the first time in 25 years. Now, I would have understood it if they had lost the second round. Because that's what I was thinking, because I felt like if they didn't get past the second round with the roster, that, you know, there could be a possibility of a coaching change, but he led them to the conference finals. And when I look at the Knicks, I'm like, shoot, Tibbs maxed them out. I really believe he maxed them. I felt like their ceiling was the conference finals because, yes, they were stacked in the starting lineup. They just didn't have the depth. When I looked at Indiana from top to bottom, and then I looked at the Knicks, I said, yeah, this is going to be a six-game series. And I said it before the series started. But this is not a coach's problem. This is a roster problem. If anything, you come back with Tibbs, you add to the roster, and you see what you can do. I don't like this firing, to tell you the truth. I don't like none of the firings that happened this year. I don't like the trades that happened this year. You go from Luka. This has been the storylines. Think about Luka trade, the Mike Malone firing, and Taylor Jenkins and Tibbs. This has been a weird year for me.
Didn't they get Bud too?
Oh, yeah.
They got him in Phoenix.
But you knew he was gone.
Yeah, but I'm saying I was just thinking
that
about
was
people
like the most notable. Like Bud was the
and
only
Mike
one.
Brown got hit earlier in the year in Sacramento.
Yeah, but you know, I'm saying it was 3 shocking firings and 1 shocking trade. Like this year has been a shocker. So, you know, it was. It's mind-boggling, but I don't get it. But hey, that's the Knicks nicking.
You know what? When I look at it, they must have gotten tired of watching him run guys into the ground and only go 7.5 deep into the roster. I wouldn't have fired him. In you know, it feels like somewhat of a knee-jerk reaction if you look at the history since Tibbs was there 5 years.
Yep.
Okay. 2021 was, you know, somewhat of a pandemic year in basketball and professional sports in general. They go and they lose in the first round to the Hawks, and then in 21-22 they missed the playoffs. 2 straight years they go in the second round, they get popped once by the Heat, then the Pacers, and they come back in the Eastern Conference Final and they lose to the Pacers. And now, you know, 48 hours later, he's sent packing. Now, maybe he knew the writing could potentially be on the wall if he didn't advance to a certain level, get him to the finals. But the fact that every single year they continue to get better, they continue to keep growing, and this is a different roster than he had a year ago. And so they made a decision to move on from him. Now, who they going to hire? What's out there that's better with this particular roster? And maybe whoever comes in says that I will extend the bench to 10 deep instead of 7 deep, and maybe I'll get 5 to 6 years out of the situation. But I wouldn't have fired him. I personally wouldn't. I'd have gave him at least 1 more year.
1 more, I would have.
One more year.
I think what we've seen is that your track record and whether you win or lose or how far you go in the playoffs isn't as big a factor as what are the relationships. What is your relationship with your GM? That's what got Mike Malone. That was a toxic environment, so it didn't matter that they were still winning. And then as soon as you're not winning, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
But I think he had a great relationship with Leon Rose and Wes.
I think he did.
That was a guy.
I think he did initially. But to your point, the fact that you get to the playoffs and you have consistently not used your bench, and then you're forced to use your bench because of foul trouble, and it turns out your bench is pretty good. Your GM is looking at it going, you haven't been playing these guys all year long. We've run out of gas. We get into foul trouble, and that's the only thing that forces you to utilize the pieces that I gave you. And so we're going to go in another direction. And look, Tibbs's calling card has been defense, right? That's what he's supposed to be exemplary at. And they were a mediocre defensive team during the season. They proved to be a mediocre defensive team in the postseason. And I think when you add it all up, where then you get into the nitty-gritty of of how he handled the foul trouble with Jalen Brunson, and there's a couple of mistakes, clock management mistakes along the way. When you add all that up, it's like, you know what? We think we have enough talent to be contending for a title. And one more year, we got knocked out by the Indiana Pacers. We lost. I think that's the other part. You got knocked out by the same team, right? Just at a different level, but at an Indiana Pacers team where you look at talent-wise and you go, they don't have as much invested in their team. They don't have as much talent as we do. And then you look at why, and Rick Carlisle was able to utilize his entire roster better than Tibbs.
So now moving forward, though, Joy, fast forward ahead, do you microwave a guy like Mike Malone that's sitting out there that's probably, he's really the only championship coach that's available, right? That's sitting out there that's won a championship. Is that somebody that you could see possibly going to New York?
I mean, the only way I see this being the right move is they get somebody in there that can take them further than Tibbs did.
Yeah. The problem is with Malone, he's the same kind of guy as Tibbs.
Run him in the ground?
Well, hard-nosed, defensive coach, like...
But in totality, in his time there, they were a good defensive team.
Overall, yes.
They got better every year. They went to the conference finals for the first time in 25 years. Yes, you lost to the Pacers back-to-back seasons, but I think we can all stop saying that the Pacers aren't a really good team. They're in the NBA Finals. They earned their way there.
Yes.
So this is confusing to me because what's the ultimate goal here? And if it's always like you got to have relationships with the GMs, then maybe shows like ours need to start saying the GMs' names more than the coaches' names. Because if they're the ones making these ultimate decisions and things don't go well, we continue to point to the coach because they're the ones we see on the sideline. But if they're not making the calls, then their names are the ones that we should be mentioning, to me. Yeah. Because, and I'm not a big fan of cycling through coaches. I would have given Tibbs another year. If you're getting better every year, if you're improving, yes, it's everyone's fault that they lost. They ran out of gas. They got into foul trouble. They didn't go deep enough on their bench. They didn't get it done. They didn't have enough talent. If you make it this far, it's everyone's fault, in my opinion. It wasn't a glaring, obvious reason, other than the Pacers were just better than them, which is what I saw from the beginning of this series. So I would have given him another year. And the only way I see this making sense is if next year they are marketably better than they are this year, because now you're really pressing reset. Are you going to go get a guy that is the hard-nosed guy that's going to essentially do exactly what Tibbs did? Well, if that doesn't work, then you just stop the momentum of what is proven to be a good coach that's developing a culture and a style and actually having success. Somebody has to lose. Yeah.
Well, there's one element here that we have to take into consideration, and that's that Jim Dolan is the owner of the Knicks. And we've
done so well. We made it like the whole season without talking about this.
I know. Well, but now we're at a crisis point where the ownership of Jim Dolan may be rearing its head, so we can't avoid the subject.
Fair enough.
This may be him where he just, he got a wild hair and he decided, you know what, I thought we were going to the finals for the first time and we're not, and somebody has to be blamed. And I'm going to blame the head coach. And then,
well, I think people can be blamed, but that doesn't mean that they have to be fired.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm not defending the move. I'm just trying to explain why it may have happened and why they may have been dissatisfied.
Yeah. Well, while we're throwing names out there, that's probably appropriate to bring it up.
Prior to Tibbs' arrival, they had missed the playoffs for 7 straight years. Then he comes. They go to the playoffs. They lose to the Hawks. And they
went 4 of the last 5 seasons.
Yeah, they went 4 of the last 5 seasons. And they get it done, get it changed, and they wind up in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I can kind of see why they let Tim go, because the roster has its shortcomings. And that style of play is not going to get to NBA Finals either. So they probably figure if we bring back this style of play, it's still going to be the same thing. They probably said, hey, we've reached our limit. I think we have a roster that can possibly get to the finals, but we have to change the way we play, because basically you depended on Jalen Brunson to make everything happen. His ball usage was very high. You depended on a guy who's, I don't even know, 6'1", soaking wet. I mean, 6'2", Jalen Brunson.
Oh, no, he's shorter than that.
6 feet.
I think he's listed as 6'2".
So
There's no way he's 6'2".
I'm just saying he's listed.
and I've said this. I said
Don't look at me like that.
And I said at the beginning of the year, if you're going to continue to build around a roster where Jalen Brunson is your best player, I think it peaked.
So look, though, Paul.
You may think that, but, and I'll let you go in a second, but keep in mind, they just sold the farm to get Mikal Bridges.
Yes.
They just sent Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo to Minnesota to go get Leon Rose's guy, Karl Anthony Towns.
Yeah.
So in the minds of the front office, they're like, we gave you everything we could possibly give you. We went and got Mikal Bridges to form the Villanova boys. We went and got Karl Anthony Towns, which was considered an upgrade from Julius Randle, right? And ultimately, we didn't get there because we couldn't get past the same team we couldn't get past last year.
But look,
that I think was the thing.
The question for all of y'all, though, if that ball doesn't bounce, no, seriously, if that ball doesn't bounce up and come right back down, or we having this conversation about a coach being fired and a team not making it to the finals, because I feel like that was the end be all right there.
I mean, it usually does come down to one or two plays.
Yeah, but that wasn't his fault.
I don't think it is his fault, but I don't think it's any specific fault. I think that the roster isn't quite good enough yet. I think the Pacers are a really, really good team, and we just haven't been able to say it yet, but we should. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year, and now they are in the NBA Finals. Bounce or no bounce.
And so now, based on what you just said, 1 year removed from the Eastern Conference Final, now in the finals, here we are with the Knicks could be 1 year removed from the Eastern Conference Final and wind up in the final.
Kept things the same.
And
kept things the same.
And that's why I think they should have given him one more year.
Let me bring up one other thing. And again, this is also associated with what I know about Jim Dolan, which is when he walks into Madison Square Garden, he likes when the fans are excited. The Knicks lost home court advantage 2 out of 3 series, and they lost the first 2 games to Indiana. That leaves a mark. When you're leaving and your team is being booed out of your own building, that is going to affect a guy like Jim Dolan. And it may be a knee-jerk reaction, but we've seen that happen before.
Let me tell you, that's probably the worst home court advantage in all of basketball, the Knicks, because the players love to play there.
Yeah.
You know
the visiting players.
The visiting players love. I never hear players say, I love to come to the Boston Garden, or I love to go to Indiana and play there.
Yeah.
Because they know what type of crowds is there. It's a respect thing with the New York fans, and it's the stage, and it's Spike Lee and the superstars. So you get, I done had some of my best games in that building.
Yeah.
Kobe, Steph, LeBron, these guys have had some of their best games in this building.
What was the best road arena you liked to play in, and what was the worst?
Well, New York Knicks. The Garden was
the best.
Yeah. The Staples and the Garden. The Crypto, saying, whatever you want to call it, Key.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever you guys are calling it today.
The worst? I hated going to Philadelphia in the playoffs. Philly in the playoffs, they'll
just rude.
They rude. They'll beat you up. For real, you can't go nowhere to eat. You can't go nowhere to eat. You got a room. You got a room service.
Boston fans be pump faking though. They don't really want. They don't really want no smoke.
Threatening.
No, they don't want no smoke.
A threat to you. Philly fans are a threat to you.
Philly fans, even from a football standpoint, they got. First of all, in the football stadium, they had a jail inside the football stadium. Yeah. Just think about that. They had a jail inside the stadium.
For real.
And they once booed Santa Claus.
Dang, that's bad.
Yeah, Philly's a little different.
Yeah.
The NBA Finals are just 2 days away. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is looking to be the first player in 10 years to win MVP and then lead his team to the championship. On the Pacers side, Tyrese Haliburton has emerged as a star during these playoffs and hopes to bring the Pacers their first championship in franchise history.
Man.
So, Paul, which star do you trust more in the finals, SGA or Haliburton?
All right, I'm going to say this and don't get mad.
Okay.
I know the obvious choice is going to be Haliburton, but SGA, but I chose Haliburton. And here's why. Now, SGA is a scorer. They need him to score 30, 32 points, 40. He's the leading scorer in the NBA. shown to be unstoppable. But I feel like you could devise a game plan to get the ball out of his hands and slow him down. I saw him slow down a bit in Denver. When that series, it was tough on him to score. They rely on that. You don't rely on Haliburton to get you 30. You don't rely on Haliburton to even get you 25. Now, he's going to get you a 15 and 13 game, and that can be enough for him to win. Whereas I'm not sure if SGA getting you 15 or 17 can beat you. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like I could devise a game plan to say, hey, I can slow SGA, because this is what they'll tell you, and this is what we all know. Your offense comes and goes. And I know he's one of the great offensive players in the game today, but it might be a night where your shot don't go. Then what is there? Whereas Haliburton, he still every night is going to give me between 10 and 15 assists. Like, that's almost like a guarantee, the way he moves the ball, the way he pushes the pace. And if he gives me 13 and 15, I can count on that as being enough, because he's got so many other people involved that is good enough for Indiana to win. So that's why I go with Haliburton on this one. And I know there's levels to this, because SGA has proved that he can't be stopped for the most part. But I feel like nobody has tried getting the ball out of his hands, double-teaming him. And so that's why I say Haliburton in this issue.
See, SGA, obviously the MVP, averaging 30 points a game in the playoffs. That's what he's averaging. He's averaging 30, where Haliburton's averaging slightly under 19. Got about 9 assists a game, where the other guy has about 7 assists a game. I can't go away from an MVP who's been consistent this entire time. He's been consistent. Where Haliburton, yeah, he give you some moments where you look up and there's a few big shots, few daggers there, here and there. But for the most part, he's not carrying his team at the same level that SGA is. And so for me, when I look at it, he's carrying his team. Like, he literally, like Paul said, he's got to score 30 every single, but I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that 30. I'm going to take that 40 if he's giving me 40.
Yeah.
Scoring 15 and having another 10 assists,
that's equivalent to almost 40.
that's cool. But if I'm giving you 35 and I'm giving you 8 assists, and everybody else is chiming in and doing what they're supposed to do, this is the reason that they are heavy favorites in the entire series, is because of that. They didn't just come up and just look at the stats and say, well, SGA is a better basketball player. They're looking at everything all around, Rick.
I read the question a little bit different. Like, who do I trust more? And yeah, SGA struggled a little bit against Denver, for sure. But he was always trying to get there. That's where I don't trust Haliburton, because there have been times in these playoffs where he's been strangely passive. And you're right, he doesn't necessarily have to score, but he does have to get to the paint. He does have to be on the attack mode. And there's some times where I feel like he's just kind of deferring, especially if he's missed a couple shots early. I don't even care if he's making every shot, but if he's getting to the paint and he's open and he's taking those floaters, that forces the defense to respect him, and then it opens everything else up. It feels like Tyrese has evolved as the series has gone on, and I've seen fewer instances where he gets passive. So maybe at this point it's not something to worry about, but I've seen enough of it, whereas SGA, even when he struggled, he was getting to the free throw line. Like, he was still in attack mode, and it eventually got the job done. So that's where I trust SGA a little bit more, because I feel like I know the effort that I'm going to get.
And we're showing all these Haliburton highlights.
Of course.
He's had so many big moments this postseason. I mean, I'm not going to pick against the MVP, but this is a first-time situation for both of them. These two young ascending teams. They're both going to be tested. From a scoring perspective, obviously, we're all going to pick SGA. It would be silly and go against math not to. But to Paul's point, Haliburton doesn't necessarily have to be the leading scorer to have the most amount of influence on the game. So if the Pacers are able to make things difficult on SGA specifically and take him out of the game in that way, is he going to be able to keep everyone else involved and keep them in the game? I guess we'll start to see how this is going to unfold once the series start, but I'm just hoping for a long series. Please give us 7, guys.
Yeah, I think it's going 7.
I've said that about every series.
Let me ask you this, Rick.
I've been wrong.
Does Haliburton wash what SGA does as far as production?
You mean
Do they cancel each other
Yeah,
out?
in a way. In a way.
way.
I mean, that's where I think this series.
In a way, right?
Yeah. In
It's like,
totality.
if I give you like he had a 15 point, like a 15 point, 15 assists.
No
Yes.
turnovers.
However you're producing the points.
Yeah.
You're producing points.
Because
It may not be under
15
your
assists
box
as
score.
at minimum 30
Yep.
points. But you know they shoot a lot of threes, so that could be,
Yep.
he gave you a total of 50 points.
Yeah.
But you know you can say the same thing for OKC too, though, Paul.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. That's why I asked, do they cancel each other out?
Yeah, those two, to a degree. I think so,
Like
to a
maybe
degree.
SGA by a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Because if I'm getting so many assists and so many points and you getting 30 and 5, like you probably your protection is probably like 6 to 8 points better maybe.
I honestly feel like the benches could really determine this series,
Yeah.
whether we get a good series or not. Does Benedict Mathurin and TJ McConnell, do they play Alex Caruso. and that group even?
Alex
Or
Caruso.
The interesting matchup
he
for me in
didn't,
this
though.
one, I want to know who's going to guard Siakam. That's going to be interesting. Are you going to put Chet on him?
you have the series going 7.
Well, yeah, I have it 7.
Wow.
I'm just
I thought
going
I
to
was
keep saying
crazy.
7 to make it happen.
I put that out.
Speak it into existence.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.